Welcome everyone to an incredibly special Forgotten Feminists, where my special guest is the lovely Asra Nomani. And of course, Asra is not forgotten at all. Everybody knows her. She has been a mentor and a heroine of mine for the longest time. She's in fact one of the people who encouraged me to start doing this work, being public, having the bravery to be public. Asra Nomani, it is my absolute honor and pleasure to have you here today. I am so excited to speak to you. I'm so excited to see you. And we were just chatting about your hair and how beautiful and lovely it is. And we were actually a little bit late starting because I got a little too excited over your butter blonde. Tell me all about it.
My butter blonde hair.
Yes. What was the situation? You said there's a story behind it.
There's a story for us everywhere we go about everything that we do. I mean, that is exactly why I wanted you to come out, Yasmine, and speak publicly, because in each one of our lives, there's a story. And so the story of my lovely highlights is this. So of course, I am at that point in my life where my natural highlights are something that I love. This hairdresser called the other day wisdom highlights, but I thought I'd go with this little butter blonde look a little while ago. I'm sitting in the hairdresser's chair and talking to the hairdresser, and he's just talking to me about things. And I tell him I'm from Morgantown, West Virginia. And he said, I have cousins there. I'm like, oh, really? Tell me about that. Oh yeah, my cousins are 𝗬𝗀𝗪𝗏𝗍𝗀. I'm like, the 𝗬𝗀𝗪𝗏𝗍𝗀? Oh, okay. We never had this conversation. They are my enemy.
Oh,
yes. The 𝗬𝗀𝗪𝗏𝗍𝗀 own the, underage bar that everybody knows about in a college town. And the one of the godfathers of this clan was the man at the mosque who was the bouncer. Yes, to my mom and me, whenever we would show up to walk in through the front door and into the main.
Okay. Yeah. You're telling too much, because I really have to get into that, because that is that's how I found you. That's how I discovered you.
But let us always be inspired by these highlights and hear these stories of treachery, because we end up with beautiful highlights. Yes,
that's right. So through the diversity, like a phoenix through the ashes, you rise with your butter blonde highlights. But it's gorgeous as usual. So I want to go back to that story that you almost started to tell before I cut you off. So one of the first things that I discovered about you, and I think that there's two things about your story that just don't get enough attention. They don't get enough. We don't talk about it enough. And there are two very, very important points. They're two very, very important feminist points that we need to discuss. Now, when I first discovered you, and there's a lot of other, Reform Muslim women and ex-Muslim women who've had the exact same feeling as me, is when we read your story and we find out about how, like you were saying, you walked in through the front doors of the mosque, not just through the front doors of the mosque, but without a hijab on. Like, people cannot comprehend. They are just like, I don't get it. It's just a door. Like, if you walk in from a different door of the church or a different door of a synagogue, nobody's going to care. So they don't understand the tremendous courage that it took for you to do that, and how it made all of us women cheer with gratitude and excitement that you were willing to do that. Because I was going to a mosque every single day of my life when I was going to an Islamic school that was in the mosque, and I never in a million years would have even dared to consider going through the front doors. I have to walk through my brother can, all the males can. Yeah, if you have a penis, you can walk through the front doors. Yeah. But everybody else, all the women and the girls, we had to go behind the mosque, past the dumpsters, in through the door that led to the kitchen.
Yeah.
So tell me about your decision to enter a mosque through the front doors and what that has cost you.
Yeah, that was a long journey that I had before I had even come to that place where I was standing in front of this green door in Morgantown, West Virginia. At that point, I was 38 years old. I had, lived my life here in the United States as a women's rights person, an activist, a feminist. I was born in India to a Muslim family. My mother had been born into that conservative interpretation of Islam where she wore the full burqa as a girl. My mother's story is that she dared to take her burqa off when she walked into the women's college in Bombay, and the driver ratted her out. And my mom had to finish that little part of her education and then summarily get married off to my dad, who had as his mother a real feminist who had also, she dared to take off her burqa in our village back in India. And so my mom ended up, being a woman that all of you would love, the mother that every single one of you would have just cherished, because she took all my crazy questions as a kid. She, every once in a while, she would say chup, which is in Urdu, in Hindi, it's to just be quiet now. So she tells her such funny stories about all those questions that I asked, that were just inappropriate. Why does my brother get to play outside when I don't get to play outside back in India? Why are there no women prophets? Why are we always learning about the male prophets? But she listened to it all. And my dad too, he's the one who drove me as a 18-year-old in our Subaru to New York City for an internship for the first time, Yasmine. He escorted me and dropped me off at a women's hotel. It was a place that he couldn't even enter, but he let me go. That's what I just want to tell, that backstory, because I had that with me in my
foundation.
Yeah, as I stepped in front of that door. And so that's why I'm so happy. I'm so honored to talk to you and all of our fellow sisters and brothers too, who join us, who have left Islam, because I understand how inhospitable the culture can be, even our families, to these questions that you have just naturally had about the religion. And that then I have always felt like the biggest impediment, to anybody staying in the religion is like a lack of compassion for these questions. So I just wanted to tell you that as I stood in front of this green door, and my little baby 𝗃𝗵𝗵𝗵𝗍 had been born a year earlier, and I didn't have a wedding ring on. So again, breaking a taboo in our faith, but my parents were there for me. My dad still had the paint on his nails, building this extra room in his house for 𝗃𝗵𝗵𝗍𝗍 and me to have a safe place in this world. So that's the family that I have. And that's the strength that I stood there then. And I saw this man, and he's an Egyptian American elder. And he said, "Sister, take the back door." And the back door, exactly like you described, it was the stairs, the dumpster. It was mostly locked, because again, inhospitable to women. And that day I wore a hijab. I wore the exact headscarf that I had worn in Mecca when I had done the pilgrimage with my son and my parents and my niece and nephew. And it was that one, with the opening, like you just put your head in the opening, right? And then it cascades over your shoulders. White, for that virginal look, right? And Yasmine, it's exactly what you said. It wasn't just about a door. It wasn't just about a step that I would be taking forward or backwards. It was about a real consciousness about the kind of Islam that I wanted to see in the world, about whether I had the inner fortitude to take then the response that was going to happen. And in that moment, I just knew I had to walk forward. And that's when I stepped forward. And then it was a few months later that we had this historic prayer in which a woman led men and women in prayer, a woman named Amina Wadud. And and I had found a gallery in New York City to host this prayer, but they canceled because they got bomb threats. And then I found a church, St. John the Divine, up on the Upper West Side.
Oh,
And
the irony.
yes, the irony. And this is the place that, you know, you'd like it. They have the special day for pets, right? Where pets get lunch. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, exactly. Who doesn't like that? So Yasmine, I had planned to wear a scarf that day, you know, because that's what we're taught, right? Like that's what ingrained in us. Though I was asking all these big questions, bringing a woman forward as an imam to men and women, allowing in this space then men and women to pray wherever they wanted to pray, and the women could be in the front row. I was still holding on to that last vestige of control, which was this piece of cloth over our head. And it was that morning then that I said to myself, wait a second, I don't believe in the interpretation of Islam that says that I, as a woman, have to wear a scarf in order to be pure. So why do I want to take away that belief in this moment of prayer, right? Like, why do I, in prayer, all of a sudden I have to have this special shield around me? And so that was the big day. And my mom, I was on the phone with her, and of course she's like, Asra, really? Like, you have to go there, you know? So she didn't believe it either, but, you know, she knew the implication. And sure enough, I was there with just a few other women. People know Mona 𝗟𝗡𝗧, you know, controversial in her own way, both, you know, amongst in our community and outside. And she didn't wear her headscarf. And sure enough, our picture was then posted on the Islamist websites with little circles around our head. Yeah. Because
like bullseyes almost.
Yeah. But that was the moment. It was March 15th, 2005. And that was a moment when I personally recognized how sacred and powerful this weapon was for the Islamists, you know, and the Muslim extremists and you know, as you know, even the, you know, establishment Muslims as a device over our lives as women. And it took me another decade to write an article challenging the idea that the headscarf is mandatory in Islam. But Yasmine, that's exactly why all of us, I want to tell you this message as your mentor: stay healthy, because it's a long war we're in. And I'm giving you like all the years of this struggle, because what you may do today, like, will define another stance you will take in a decade, 20 years from now. And it's going to be pivotal and important for the changes that we want to see.
Yeah, no, I absolutely believe that you are planting seeds for trees that you will never eat the fruit from those trees. You will never sit in the shade of those trees. You're not doing this expecting to see, you know, vast changes in your lifetime. You're doing it for the future. But having said that, there still have been vast changes in your lifetime. When you mentioned standing at those green doors at that mosque on that very first day, when you were told to get to the back, go to the back door, basically get to the back of the bus. And you went from that, and instead of somehow cowering away from that and feeling like this is too big of a mountain, you know, I'm just David and this is Goliath, I have to walk away. Your response was to get a female imam. Yes. So you were like, oh, the back door. Hey, is that where you wanted me? Okay, watch this.
Yeah.
You know,
you can just imagine all the bros, right? The Muslim bros that were hating on me. They were like that was her plan all along. And I was like, no, dude, I actually just wanted
You
like,
inspired this.
yeah, they don't realize like how much action they foment with their hostility to reform and to change and to just common sense. And so, you know, they write these chapters and they don't even realize it because they reveal how strongly they hold these ideas of that really seek to control other people, right? Like
That's
that
what it's all about.
Yeah, that's how firmly they are. And the harder they resist, they reveal how important these ideologies are as levers in people's lives that deny fundamental human rights. And that's why I just, you know, so, you know, it was lonely. It was such a lonely battle. My mom was with me all the time, every day, every Friday that we would go to the mosque and I would claim my space then at the Jummah prayer. My mom was beside me, you guys. She would wear hoodies. It was so great. She would wear hoodies. One of them, my favorite had Brooklyn across the front. My nephew's hoodie, she'd just like take it off his hanger and wear it with me. She didn't go for the prayer. Like, this is what you guys will love. Like, she went there because she didn't want me to be alone. You know, she didn't want me to sit there alone, because then what the men would do, what they do, which is surround me and
intimidate you.
And intimidate. And, you know, as you know, with prayer, we're like, I'm sitting on the ground, they're standing above me. At that time, we didn't even have, like the phones were not, you know, our weapons at that time. I didn't think of body cams and all this stuff. Like, you just had your voice. And they, the other thing that you guys will love is that we refused that interpretation that we have to be sitting in the back row, because the back row was like beneath the balcony where the women were. And it was literally in the shadows. And we would go into the middle of the hall and they'd have to like assemble around us. And I was always there. Yeah, I was always there earlier to claim my space, because there is this hadith or saying of the Prophet Muhammad that, and I know not everybody here thinks of him as a prophet, but nonetheless, that, you know, whoever arrives, and that if the tradition in the 7th century was that late arriving men would pray behind the women. There wasn't this idea that like a woman just has to keep shifting back, you know, until and my mom was so awesome, because she's like, they kept telling us like we had to pray with our back to the wall. And my mom's retort to the guy, another Egyptian American, I'm so sorry, Yasmine. Hanna.
I mean, I already know what Egyptians are like.
I know.
I'm fully aware.
But I will give a shout out to my first Sunday school teacher. He was an Egyptian American named Dr. 𝗪𝗓, and he took all my questions. He always answered my questions. But my mom would say to them, why don't you just dig a hole, shove us in it, and stone us to death? Because she got, she just gave it to them. And that's the, you know, that's the support that I want all of you to know and feel in this world as you're having questions. I know you may not be in the mosque challenging these men, but like, as you're going through life, like, I want you to know that same kind of community. And that's why I so believed in you, Yasmine, from the beginning, in creating this kind of community. And you know, you guys are the worst nightmare for these establishment Muslims, because as they say, you don't care about losing face in the community. You know, you are the honey badgers of the Muslim community.
Yes, that's right. My mom already threatened to kill me. So there's nothing more beyond that, right? So it's kind of like, well, it's, you know, the difference between our moms is, you know, night and day. You know, so that's really a significant part of this story too, is I remember when I met 𝗪𝗲𝗄𝗧 for the first time, and I was kind of nervous because she's a woman who knows how you know, she knew all about my activism, and I knew she was Muslim, and I didn't know how she was going to respond to me. And she reached out and gave me a hug, and she was telling me that she has, gosh, I'm going to tear up again, but I was bawling when I met her. And I said to her through, like, you know, choking back tears, I said, if I'd had a mother like you, I don't know if I would have left Islam. Because a part of it, a huge part of it was exactly what you said. A huge part of it was that they just push you out because they're so aggressive. They're so intolerant. They're so unbending, unwilling to even acknowledge, you know, the questions that you're asking, let alone respond to them. You know, so it was just, I grew up in such a staunch fundamentalist environment where, you know, the old description, right, that you can see on the big billboards in Iran with a tightrope, and the tightrope is going across, and there's, excuse me, hell is beneath you, below you, and you have to walk this tightrope, a 𝗬𝗢𝗪𝗏, the long, thin, straight road. And if you don't navigate yourself and balance yourself so carefully, you fall into the depths of hell. And that's what it's like. The smallest, tiniest little infraction, and that's it.
Yeah.
You are nothing. And the hijab is quite often for women, that is the thing.
Right.
Because it's exactly what you identified, control. That's what they use to control a woman. And when she takes it off, she's saying, it's like removing shackles, right? Removing handcuffs. I will not be controlled. And oh my God, do they hate that?
I'm wondering, when you heard the story of when you were growing up, did you hear that story of that bridge being a strand of hair?
Oh, no, I didn't, but
Okay.
that's makes sense.
Yeah, well, I'll never forget the moment that I heard that story. And it was actually my mother who told me that story. And I was 10. I was living we were living in this it wasn't the efficiency apartment, sorry, the faculty apartments in Morgantown, West Virginia, literally, you guys, a block from the mosque. So the mosque had behind it, so in between us was the McDonald's. Like, this is such a classic American town story, and the Pierpont house. And that's going to be another little story for us in a second. But I was in the apartment complex. My mom was teaching me my Arabic, and I was reading the Quran, and then she's telling me this story, and I was like horrified, right? I was horrified by this nightmare of a reality, and the other part of it was the hellfire below you, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I heard it, and my mom told it to me as a strand of hair. And I think that's really important as in my own life, because I then began to realize, wow, so a strand of hair is, you know, then our, division, you know, between a life of ascension and the depths of hell. And that's exactly right, what they would.
I did hear that, yes.
They pummel you with that then when you show a strand of hair, like as if you're making a decision that will send you to the depths of hell, and any man who dares to look at that strand of hair. But yeah, you know what, and the best part is, like, I asked my mom many years later, like, why did you even tell me that story? You know, it was such a horrible story. And she said, you know, it's the indoctrination. Like, she while being a purveyor of it, was recognizing it like that. And I love that. Like, I love that. That's the other beauty of just staying healthy, you guys, and being healthy in your families, if you can be, because it takes a while to have those conversations too. And I don't know that you can all have those conversations with folks with whom you've had conflict and a lot of this tension that you're talking about, Yasmine, but life is beautiful when you can kind of keep growing together, and that's been really fun for my mom and my dad too.
That's beautiful. I mean, it's absolutely wonderful, and it gives me hope for humanity. And you're raising 𝗫𝗍𝗪 to be such a responsible, wonderful young man. I mean, we had a conversation before about how he is with his girlfriend and how proud that makes you as a mom. And that's exactly, that's what we can do sometimes. Is not in your case, but like in my case, you can take the negativity. I can take the all the childhood trauma and I can turn it into raising my daughters to be free, wonderful, passionate, beautiful human beings moving forward in their lives. And then it cleanses me, it heals me of the past. And really that's all we can do.
Yeah.
But speaking of 𝗫𝗍𝗪, I do want to talk a little.
I was just going to say, I just wanted to get this thought out there just because I think, I think it's been your story and my story, that we have this common friend, 𝗟𝗘𝗧𝗦𝗃𝗏, a psychologist.
Yes.
And it was 𝗟𝗘𝗧 who introduced me to this concept that we can have post-traumatic growth. And I just wanted to introduce that idea to people if they hadn't heard it already, because as you're moving forward in your lives, it's always nice to know that concept and the concept of neuroplasticity, which means the brain can keep recovering and healing. And so all that you might have experienced in the past can just be, part of a future in which you know a different reality, and there's hope. So I wanted to share.
No, thank you so much, Asra. I appreciate that. And yes, I agree completely with you in that is what keeps me going, because there were times when I felt like, am I ever going to get past this? Am I ever not going to find latent bits of indoctrination within me and be horrified by it? But yeah, neuroplasticity, exactly what you said. You just have to keep picking it out and reprogramming your brain, cleansing it, I like to call it, from all the dark past. And then once you get to a point where you feel safe and strong enough that you can actually start to support others and reach your hand forward like you have done, and that's why I'm doing this work. And then I'd like to think that from my work, I've also encouraged other people to come forward. It's that ripple effect. Yeah. But of course, you have to get to a position where you yourself already feel like you're strong and healthy and ready to do that. Because like you said, this is incredibly difficult work. I think that some people can sort of understand that kind of just on a intellectual level, but it's really difficult for them to understand that the way you and I do at such a deep emotional, psychological level, how difficult this work is. And the fact, this is why I praise people like you and Ayan and Masih Alinejad and people that have been doing this for so long, because I wonder, if it wasn't for you being the example for me to continue going, it's so difficult. Like so often you just want to throw your hands up in the air and walk away and say, you know what, I'm just going to live my own life with my husband and my girls and my dog and have some peace and not be involved in this work at all anymore. But the way Ayan said it is, you're compelled to do it. You have a responsibility to do it because you know of all the other people that are silenced and who truly cannot speak up. But we are privileged to be in the West. And so that alone is enough for us, gives us the freedom that so many millions of other people don't have. And so that's why we have to keep pushing forward regardless of how difficult it is.
Right. Agreed.
Yeah. So I want to go back a little bit to your time in Pakistan. You were there with one of your colleagues, Danny Pearl. And I want to ask you about your experience with Islamic terrorism, your very close encounter with Islamic terrorists. Can you please tell us about that?
Yeah. So some people may wonder, what is it that I saw when I stood at that green door? And I had on my hips, as I said, my son. He was just a year old at the time, and he was an expression for me of the future that I wanted to build. But there was a past that I had that was a clarity for me. And in that was this image that I had of my dear friend, Danny Pearl. I saw Danny's face because in Danny's face is a man who was a smiling, beautiful human being who was the kind of guy that would be anybody's friend, you know, in the workplace, the guy that everybody had a crush on, you know, yeah, you know, that kind of person, right? And he was such a great, great friend to me as an immigrant Muslim girl to the United States. I met him when I was about 28 at the time. And I was in the Wall Street Journal's DC bureau. And so remember I told you guys about learning about that strand of hair and the falling to the of hell as a 10-year-old. Well, like most of you, you know, I grew up then, even though my parents were very enlightened about things with the traditional boundaries between boys and girls. I wasn't allowed to go to the Friday night dance. I got asked to the prom, and Yasmine, my response to this boy named Steve Newcomb was, I can't. And everybody here will understand that response. It's like, what, you can't? Like, you don't have a car? No, I can't go. And so I never went to my prom, and I met Danny at the age of 28. We became fast friends in the newsroom. He learned that from me. I told him I didn't have my prom. So I had kissed a guy. I had had a boyfriend at that, between the mosque and that home that we'd lived in was also this apartment complex called Pierpont House. And I had met a guy in Arabic class, of course, in West Virginia, and, you know, fallen in love. And I was dating him secretly, of course, the secret lives of Muslim girls. And I had my first kiss there, you guys, right in the shadow of the McDonald's and the mosque. It's just so, it's only a small town story. You know, you can just imagine. So there I am at 28 then, and Danny helps me throw my first party ever. And we call it a Midsummer Night's Prom. So at 28, I had my first prom. And yeah, and you understand like the completion that I felt, just both development, both, you know, culturally, but also developmentally, because so many develop. That's one of the things that I really came to recognize, is that in that rigid culture where we have such strict boundaries that are unhealthy, we don't have normal psychological development and being able to then make good, wise choices for boyfriends or spouses or partners, whatever our partner may be. So there we were, great friends. And then fast forward many years, 9/11 happens. Danny is living in India with his now wife, Marianne, and I'm in Morgantown on book leave. We both make the same decision as a lot of journalists to go to Pakistan, where we later find out that, you know, the whole cell to launch the 9/11 attack was staying. Well, I ended up falling in love because I took too seriously that patch of my childhood that it said, make love, not war. So you're going to relate to this story too, that like I was trying to, you know, mate and partner with the man that I thought my family wanted me to be with, you know. So I, a Pakistani Muslim man, he was liberal enough that he was dating me in Karachi, but still I thought, oh, he's the right race, he's the right religion, you know, speaks Urdu. And I rented a home in Karachi, and Marianne and Danny had both met my boyfriend, and they didn't think he was like a great choice for me, which is, again, typical of, you know, us when we don't learn how to make great choices. So they were coming to check things out, and Danny had this big interview. And so on January 23rd, 2002, it was this, you know, moment that is seared in my memory. And I was outside my home. This like beautiful family of parrots were circling overhead, making their song. And it was such a bright, sunny day in Karachi. We hadn't had rain in weeks. Danny was fumbling. He was always fumbling with things. And he slipped into the taxi that I had called. And I just waved to him and said, "See you later, buddy." But he never returned. We waited and waited that night, went into his laptop and tried to call the fixer that had arranged this interview for which Danny had left. And so, Yasmine, it was there then that a few days later, we learned that Danny had been kidnapped and held at gunpoint in shackles. The photos arrived that are called Sign of Life photos. And it was there, that I, as a Muslim, saw firsthand for the first time in my life the most dangerous manifestation of this extremism within our faith that says you can murder. And that was the just clarifying moment for me, to this day, as I stood in front of that green door, always seeing the beaming smile of Danny, not those images of him in captivity. And then later, 5 weeks later, these police officers and FBI agents came to my front door, and they told Marianne, this man named Captain told Marianne, "I'm sorry, I couldn't bring your Danny home." And yeah, and it was there then that we learned that I said, how do you know? Like, we saw a video. I'm like, could be a fake. How do you know? And the regional security officer took me aside. The consul general took me aside, this man named John Bauman. And he said, "Asra, we know because they beheaded him."
No.
Yeah. And they are so sick that they put their finger. I've never spoken about this, actually. Yasmine, I knew that something would emerge in this conversation of ours because of our closeness, but they put on his final moments of pulsation, I can't even say life, but just pulsation, their finger, so that you could see the blood pulsating in his veins here. And that movement, confirmed that this was not just digitized and a clip job, but that this was his life, in those last seconds. And then that was just the cruelty, the worst form of cruelty in the name of the faith in which I was born. And then I learned this horror that all of you will understand. Like, you understand this very deeply. Like, this is what you know without even knowing it. They scrubbed the floor in this safe house that they had taken over in the outskirts of Karachi. They scrubbed the floor, and with water, buckets of water, washing away the blood. But of course, it remained. And then they laid out their janamas, their prayer rugs, in the direction of Mecca, to bow their heads, to bless this act, right? To lay their claim to their faith, interpreted in this cruel way. And dang it, that was like, the moment, that knowing all that I chose my path was to challenge them every single day of my life and that interpretation, because I had this moment a couple of years earlier where I'd met the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama enters into this. Danny knew the story. I met him in the banks of the Ganges River in Allahabad, which is one of the cities featured in this Oscar music, movie, the Nacho Nacho song, and RRR, this movie. And there I was, and the Dalai Lama had spoken about conversion, and he said, what I encourage people to do is to find peace in the faith in which they were born. And instead of converting out, of course, leaving is an option that many of you have chosen. But that was when I was most in conflict, in the most intimate, personal way possible with this religion into which so many of us were born. And my path then at that moment became of reform, of just destroying, in the court of public opinion. Really, that's what we have to do, win in the war of ideas against this doctrine of extremism. And I appreciate so much the support of Yasmine, folks like you and Ayan and others that have chosen to leave the faith, for those of us that are still struggling to, challenge the religion's worst interpretations, because I know you've given up on that effort, but the fact that you support us in trying to do it is, so positive, because they're still going to keep slaying Dannies, they're still going to keep killing young women who don't believe the Islam that they demand. And that's what's happening, from the streets of Iran to the souls, in North America that get slain every day in the face of that kind of dogmatism. So it's Danny's face that it gives me the courage always, because I see in his departure from this world the cost to humanity if we don't take on that responsibility, like you just described, to manifest a different reality.
Yeah, I'm really, it was so dark and terrible to even just listen to you talking about this. So for you to have experienced that, to go through that, and to come out the other side feeling like you want to be a force of good to try and counter this evil, is really inspiring to me. As you mentioned, I'm one of those people where I just felt like there was no single valid reason for me to have any kind of allegiance or loyalty to this religion that has brought me nothing but turmoil and shame and anger and trauma. And I see it happening to so many people around the world. And it just makes me feel, it just made me feel like I want nothing to do with it, So there is an intense strength in you saying, no, I'm going to stay here. I'm going to weather this storm, and I'm going to try my best, until my last breath, because I'm inspired by my friend Danny, to try and work on this and to try and fix this. And that is in the description for this talk, that's why I described you, because you are a tiny woman of tiny stature, but you do take on these massive Goliath issues. And obviously Islamic extremism, there's nothing, that could be more dangerous for you to take on. And what's really interesting through this book that you have written, this latest book that you've written, because you're the author of many books, which is called The Woke Army, is you talk about the intersection between really two Goliaths, the huge issue of Islamic extremism, and then the huge issue of really secular extremism, which is also happening in America, and the intersection between those two groups. So I know what inspired you to fight one of these Goliaths, but talk to me a little bit about what what got your attention with the woke brigade, and what made you decide that you also wanted to take on that fight as well, as if you didn't have enough on your plate?
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody is going to understand this so clearly in this community that we've got, because you all understand that it's not just about a religion, right? Like, it's about indoctrination, right? And an ideology that breeds sectarianism. Like that I know you can see beyond just, the ayahs from the Quran that we read that are just convenient vehicles for creating sectarianism. The acts of violence like Danny's brutal murder that they perpetuate, because extremism and sectarianism come in so many forms. Well, behind me is my books organized chronologically, of course. And at the top is Hinduism and Buddhism, and then Christianity, Judaism, then Islam. And behind me is an entire shelf of the extremist interpretation of Islam that we've all been studying and that we know about. And in there is the people who challenged it also, like Fatima Mernissi, whom I had the joy of meeting in Rabat, Morocco, and was very inspiring in my efforts to then get educated about a new interpretation of Islam. But over here, you guys, on this shelf is the new religion, this new secular religion, just like this beautifully described, Yasmine, of this far left extremism. People call it with different names, cultural Marxism, some people call it socialism today. Others call it wokeism, So the book, just like you said, it's a very subtle cover. The crescent and star, right, of Islam. The extremists is whom I'm capturing here. And then the hammer and sickle of the far left. And we call it the woke army because they work like an army in society. So what happened for me, and this is where I want to just also tell you all, the courage that you're building, and the skills that you're building to be voices for good in the world, like, it may not manifest in our Muslim community, and on the issue of religion. It could be about anything. It could be you as a parent advocating for the ousting of a principal who is bringing, just chaos into your school. It could be to get rid of the gas station that's down the road that's doing whatever to your neighborhood. And that's what happened in the summer of 2020 for me, after having had 18 years of fighting the extremists within Islam. I ended up confronting this new extremism that was called, social justice, completely on steroids. I always considered myself a social justice warrior. We're fighting for women's rights. I called myself progressive. And all of a sudden, these activists were hijacking those terms. And what they were doing is they were coming after the kids in America's schools. And the example that I'll tell you that happened to us then as parents is that little boy that I brought into the world, 𝗃𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗍, he was really strong in math and science, and he tested into this magnet school that we've got in Northern Virginia called Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology. In Northern Virginia, we have a lot of diaspora that have come to this area for technology jobs. So it's been a magnet for those adults. And then those adults' kids gravitate toward those fields. They're good in them. So 2020, the demographic at TJ was 70% Asian, 10% other minorities, and then 20% white. I walked into that school and I saw and felt diversity like I had never experienced, except when I'd gone to Little India, in Chicago. There was sugarcane juice at the PTA meetings. There was biryani on back to school night. It was just so festive with the cultures of 30 countries from which the students' families had come. But guess what? This principal, and she happened to be white, and race shouldn't matter, but now everything was about race. She told us, a mostly minority community, and you guys you've heard in my story all that, just you've had a glimpse, into what my family's experienced. But she stood there from her place of, quote, privilege to tell us about the privileges that we needed to put a check on in our lives. And then she told us that we needed to change the racial demographic at the school to match the racial demographic of the county. So that's something that's called racial balancing. And it's illegal in the United States of America because we have this beautiful concept in democracies of equality and that you should have equal opportunity. But what was what was being ushered in is this new era that we have now seen unfold over the last 3 years, where the K through 12 schools are the new battlefield for this woke army in trying to put in place a new religion that has created a new hierarchy of human value. And all of you are going to understand this very clearly, that that is a new sectarianism. It now separates people by these categories of oppressor and oppressed, and it's putting into the hands of little babies the indoctrination. And this, like, you guys know so deeply, like, you understand exactly how I understood this, because you went to the Sunday schools, you went to the madrasas, these religious schools where the indoctrination was intended for your very vulnerable minds as children. And so this is just like one example, Yasmine, of one of the books, 𝗏𝗏𝗍𝗏. They're going after the kids with these little beautiful cardboard books, and they're using the big ideas of the Bible. Their Bible is this red book called Critical Race Theory. This is their Bible for their new religion. And in it, Asians become white adjacent. Jewish Israelis become white supremacists. An atheist becomes a, Islamophobe. And they use race. Everybody knows this. They've been the targets of it. When you challenge Islam, they call you racist because they have racialized Muslims and used this as their shield for their bad ideas. And that is exactly what I document in the book, you guys, is case after case after case of how the far left and the Islamists, an unholy alliance of conflicting ideas, have come together to fundamentally challenge freedoms that we have in the West. And they are what? You guys know it well. Free speech, right? The right to leave a religion, the right to dress how you want to dress, the right to your own free thought. And that is like, it was the 20 years before that gave me the courage, you guys, to become a leader in this movement that we call the Mama Bear movement. And this is what I want to just share with you is I had my mom, the Mama Bear in my life with me at the mosque, but you all know it's a lonely, lonely battle. There's a reason why my second book is called Standing Alone in Mecca. It's like, I knew that there were 2 million other people around me, but you're standing alone like many of you do. But I've now found this community, just like the community you're building, Yasmine, of like-minded people who have so much courage. And I just want to share that with all of you, because you may not feel that community in one part of your life, and then you'll find a cause or a purpose in which suddenly you find others that have also gone down this path and made their own choice. Like, they face their own green door, and they dare to step forward. And so that's the battle we're in right now. And this very well. The Islamists are using Islamophobia to shut us up. And unfortunately, the far left, and including in the United States, the Democratic Party, have given them shelter. And that is the alliance that we can uniquely challenge. Like, we have the authenticity, and we give permission to so many others who are afraid of taking on the woke army. So you are so necessary in this battle.
So before we go on to talk about what you identified there, which is the intersection between Islamists and this far left woke ideology, I just want to clarify. So what happened was that the principal of your school, even though you were 70% Asian, she started to identify those Asian kids as white kids. Yep. And so that was problematic.
Yeah, because what is she doing? I mean, a so-called liberal, culturally, diverse individual is now whitewashing an entire community, right? And that's what they do. They forget, their own values. And that's why we feel so many people who have been classic liberals feel abandoned, by political parties and establishments too. I used to love the American Library Association, but they're in bed with the Islamists now, that there's just these unholy alliances that include then this principal who was parroting the new racism of this woke army that deems Asian kids as white and separates those kids then from opportunities. That's the big fundamental legal battle. It is illegal to be discriminatory. Like, that's what you all know. And that is why you refuse the interpretation of Islam that exists in so many mosques around the world that create separate and unequal conditions, right, for women. That's that fundamental idea of civil rights is now suddenly being enshrined in policies across the country with so-called affinity groups that separate people by race, by sexuality, by gender, separating and segregating people. Yeah.
The assumption that because you are white or because you are Asian or because you are Jewish, or then therefore you don't deserve the leg up that we're going to give to these other different groups. Like, it really is the sectarianism that you've been describing. It really is the us and them and the other. It's just othering people.
Right.
And not only is it dangerous, obviously, top down because of all of the policies and because of, I know we don't have time to get into all of the many details, but there was, certain awards that kids weren't even getting anymore because their skin wasn't the right color. All of those things are problematic. But then what also ends up happening is you're encouraging the children to start seeing each other as others, and you're creating racism. You're creating these little cliques and groups of kids who start to see, no, you're not one of us. You're not part of our group. You're part of that group.
I want to share this book because we have seen it as Muslims and now ex-Muslims, many of you, manifest in many ways. Yasmine, you remember, you can't, us as women, we can't marry non-Muslims, right?
Yeah.
You're from Egypt. Oh, you can't marry somebody who's Pakistani. Like, sectarianism, division. I remember meeting these
Sunni Shia,
these girls from Qatar I met, and they couldn't marry outside of their tribe. So this is the new sectarianism. This is a book that is read in public schools in the United States. It was found by a mom in a Pennsylvania school district. It's called Not My Idea, a book about whiteness. Okay, so you could substitute whiteness with anything that you and I have ever heard in division, and it's supposed to sensitize children to racial issues. But I want to take you to one of the final ideas that they share. This is, again, the use of religion. Whiteness is a bad deal.
Oh.
And the little caption here says, dude, we can see your pointy tail. The devil. So the devil, religion, this is religion being used. And what is burning? The $20 bill and a contract. Binding you to whiteness, you get stolen land, stolen riches, special favors. Sign below for anybody who is white. This is the shaming of children who are white. You put this book in a Pakistan, and it could be a book about Shiism, and
Yes,
yes. You put this in another community, and it can be about any ism. And then this is the part that everybody should see. Innocence is overrated. And so anybody who is a parent knows this is so dangerous. And you don't have to be a parent to know that that means that children, right? Like our little babes are now the new battlefield for their bad ideas. And
the child soldiers, basically.
yes, exactly. That's exactly what has happened. And you all know it so deeply because ISIS literally put AK-47s, in front of those children when they were recruiting them, indoctrinating them. You all have known it in your lives in one way or another that may have led you to believe that you had to hate certain people, right? That it would be anti-gay.
Definitely.
Yeah, anti-gay or anti-this or anti-that person. And so you all have survived it. Like you all have looked at, you have seen that indoctrination and said no in your own lives. And that's why when I started seeing that principle divide us, I saw Danny again, I saw his face because he was Jewish and his family was from Israel, but that wasn't what we talked about. We talked about like playing volleyball and like how we played this game of like getting words into the journal as a challenge to ourselves. So one day I had to get the word shanked into the Wall Street Journal. Like when you play volleyball and you shank a pass, like we would just have fun. That was like our friendship. It wasn't about our Arab-Palestinian relations or what is common among the Jews and the Muslim faith dialogue. It was basically like, okay, Danny, this girl's got a crush on you. Like, are you interested in her? Like that was our conversation. And that's humanity. And that's what everybody here believes in. And so that's the new battlefield. And I want to just connect the dots for you on how the Islamists have embedded themselves. Because that summer, the principal came after us. And guess what? She got on a secret committee run by the Education Secretary of Virginia to take on the issue of merit. That was the Trojan horse to get rid of the Asian kids at the school. Oh my gosh, Yasmine, you're going to just it's going to blow your mind. What's his name? His name was Atif Carney. I looked him up, being a Nancy Drew, and he had run for political office. I looked up his political contributions because that's what we all do, right? When we're in the battlefield. I followed the money. And where did the money go? It went just a few miles from me to this building at 500 Grove Street that I document in the book, because that is the hub of this alphabet soup of organizations that are putting the bad ideas of extremist Islam into the world. Like the countries of Qatar, Saudi Arabia, now Turkey have created this entire network that have created beachheads in Virginia government, Georgetown University, Newsweek, New York Times, MSNBC. They are promoting and perpetuating the Islamist ideas of, regressive values. And 𝗬𝗃𝗧 was elevated to be education secretary. And he was now working with the far left in this war on not only the kids from Asia, but merit and really the fundamental doctrine in the United States of equal opportunity. And sure enough, he was working with the guys at the mosque in Manassas, Virginia, at Darul Noor. And what did they do to us as Muslim women when we walk in? They tell us to go to the back, right? They don't tell us. It's just like Masi says.
Not very progressive.
Yeah, not progressive. They align out in the streets politically with the party that says our body, our choice. But at the mosque, I don't get a choice, right? I don't get a choice to take my body to the front of the mosque. And that is how I saw in Virginia that phenomena of the Islamists, entering into the Democratic Party politics here in the United States that has created Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and all these other, just reminders to us of the worst of our religion gaining power in North America. Like it's so disturbing. And you have valiantly been fighting this in Canada. And we all have to fight it all across the world, because here at 500 Grove Street, they are funding, supporting, and enabling the Islamist parties in countries like Tunisia, Egypt, Algeria, Morocco, Pakistan to power. So everything that we are fighting, they are emboldening, and from the safety and protection of the freedoms that we have in the United States. And so that's just something that only we can see clearly, because we fought them, we know them, and we uniquely have the courage and the capacity to take them on because we come from that community, right? But don't you worry, when 𝗬𝗃𝗧 came after me, Yasmine, what did he have to say about me? That I was a white supremacist, that I was an extremist. And what was the extremist organization that I belonged to? The Muslim Reform Movement. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
The audacity.
Right.
So everything that you said is true. And I want to add to that too, that we know history, that we have seen, not even, this is very recent history too, that we know how when the Islamic regime of Iran was coming into power, what did they do? They made alliances with the socialists and the communists and all the far lefts in Iran, and they formed an alliance so that they could come to power. And then what did they do once they got power? Executed all of their allies, right? And that was with the help of America as well, because they were in their McCarthy phase of being so afraid of communists and Russians and, all of that pre-Cold War stuff. So we have seen these alliances before. We've seen it in Syria. We've seen it in Lebanon. We saw it in Egypt with President Morsi, with Obama encouraging President Morsi to become president there, and the Egyptian people ousting him as soon as they could. There's this really great video of this Egyptian woman. She went viral where she was like, "Shut up your mouth, Obama," because the Egyptian people were so angry that here he was supporting a Muslim Brotherhood shill to become the president of their country. And that's the last thing in the world they wanted. So it's like we have fought these battles already. We have seen this already, this alliance of the American Democrats or progressives or far left or whatever you want to call it with Islamists around the world. And now you're seeing it in America. And it really is, you know, you have to take a step back initially and be like, how did this happen? Like, how did these two groups think that they were going to see eye to eye when they are so different they're polar opposites in many ways. But really the two of them, what they have in common is just an aggression and a hate for Western civilization. And I feel that that is really what is connecting them at that level. And then they just ignore all the other stuff. Like, sure, you want 140 genders and we want to kill everybody who isn't straight, but let's just not worry about that right now, you know, like.
Yeah, this is the next step for the far left, right? Is the pronoun book and bye binary. But I'm sure these are in the mosque library, right?
Right. Bye binary in the mosque library. Oh my God. There is actual hadith about men who dress like women needing to be killed. Yeah.
The gay BCs, I'm sure that's, you know, right there in the men's section, you know, for that man who believes that T is for trans, right? I mean, it's so ridiculous. These same mosque leaders are the ones that call the police on us when we go into the main hall. Like, that's how absurd this alliance is. And we see through it. You know, this, Yasmine, you will not believe it. The daughter of the founder of 𝗟𝗓𝗧 Mosque has now won a seat at the school board here in Fairfax County, Virginia. She didn't vote for the 9/11 resolution that honored our first responders. Her dad literally hired 𝗟𝗓𝗪𝗀𝗍, the al-Qaeda imam who got killed by a drone when he finally fled the United States. And guess what? That mosque has preached, the imam, he has preached female genital mutilation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that is the alliance they have created.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. One of the most shocking moments for me was when I watched her step forward at a fundraiser for American Muslims for Palestine when she was running for office. And that's when I knew in 2019 that, you know, they had basically
infiltrated.
Yeah, successfully.
Wow. Now, I have taken way more time than I said I would, an hour more than I said I would. So I really want to open it up to everybody who's here today. I'm sure there are so many questions and comments for you. I can see the chat popping up, but I haven't read it. So if you were one of the people that wrote in the chat, please go ahead and raise your hand, and hopefully you can just share directly with Asra. Okay, we will start with my good friend Amir, because I love and adore him. Amir, please go ahead.
Hello, Yasmine. Yeah, I'd be remiss if I didn't start with saying how much I love you, and same for you, Asra. You guys are beacons of light in an sometimes feels like ever-growing darkness. So just from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. Asra, I wanted to ask you, I'm trying to make my question as short as possible, but you know, I suppose the question is, how do you combat it, the wokeness? I think, you know, intellectually, it's people like yourself, Yasmine, Douglas Murray, Sam Harris, etc. The arguments intellectually is very one-sided, but I think they're very immune to logic and intellectualism. So their weapon of choice is very superior. It's using words like white supremacist and throw it at someone like yourself or Yasmine. So it's kind of an uneven fight. And intellectualism doesn't seem to do any harm against their cause, which then leaves the question, if not intellectualism and logic, what else?
Yeah, that's a great question. And thank you, Amir, for being just a strong voice yourself, because we so need men that stand up against this tyranny. So I'm going to show you Exhibit A in one of my tactics. This is a shirt that my dad designed for me. He drew it for me in our fight against the wokeism. You all have seen AOC's beautiful Met Gala gown. So I literally put that gown in front of my dad and I said, Dad, I want to make something like this, paint it. And what did I do? I put here on this side all the names that we've been called. They call us domestic terrorists as parent activists, QAnon moms, white supremacists. And then on this side, my dad made this beautiful heart, and I wrote, "We are mama bears." So I took that term that, you know, makes everybody's hearts melt, of our moms and our mama bears, when unfortunately that's at least the aspiration, even if you don't have it in reality in your life. But Amir, you know, one thing I learned was how to be a joyful warrior also in this effort, because I finally had other parents, you know, that were ready to just take on the ideologues that were coming after our kids without being shamed. That was one of the first things that I learned from a Chinese American dad named 𝗃𝗀𝗃𝗀 in New York City. He said to me, he said, be unapologetic. And you guys probably know that Linda Sarsour has built a brand on this idea of being unapologetically Muslim, right? But her unapologetically Muslim is really racist. It's, you know, xenophobic against Jewish people also from Israel. Well, what we decided to do was, you know, take on that concept of being unapologetic, and it's been phenomenal. We have been able to build this movement of parents that expose their like illogical ideas. I understand that that's not going to always speak to our adversaries, but for the people in the middle, it has at least allowed them, these, you know, tyrants, to be challenged. So they see us, you know, they see us at the school board meetings yelling and shouting and speaking back. The only thing that we're not doing, Yasmine, is throwing a slipper at the school board members, because that'll just give them the excuse to cuff us, right, and send us to the police. But definitely the tactic that I've taken is to laugh at the words that they throw at us, to use it in our own branding, you know, and to turn their weaponization of those words against them, ridiculing them for their use of such ridiculous ideas. And then, you know, I think it's Masi who has really so effectively done what you've asked about, which is touch the hearts of people. And I'm just so proud of that work that she has done, because it's been fearless, as you all know, not always appreciated. But wow, how do you go from being politically incorrect with Code Pink, you know, throwing spring break trips to Iran, to becoming Time Woman of the Year? It's because you just keep touching and touching the hearts of people. And I agree with you completely, like that we have to do that as we argue from a place of logic also.
Amir, did you want to follow up on that, or are you good before we move on to the next question?
I guess if I may, yeah, I appreciate everything you're saying. I suppose it's, I don't want to sound blip, but someone like yourself and someone like Masi and someone like Yasmine, I appreciate that you have access to these tactics. Whereas with the risk of sounding solipsistic, if I do it, I get fired from my job and I lose my mortgage. Yeah. And I think the vast majority of people, if we speak up, if I don't agree to do the diversity, equity, and training courses at work, my career is over. And
right.
Yeah, one last thing as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well, just because you touched on it. The sort of intersection between Islamism and the wokeism is very interesting. But did you also see, I think it was Dearborn School Board meeting at the South Middle School, with the Muslims being the most vociferous voices against the teaching of especially sexualism and homosexuality in middle school?
Yeah, it was like the woke's nightmare, right? Unfolding. Like all of a sudden, the Muslims that, you know, they've been doing apologetics for a couple of decades are turning on them. And I've talked to a lot of those parents, and, you know, they are, many of them coming from the same place that most of us would come, which is, hey, we don't have a problem with the LGBTQ community, because we shouldn't, you know, like this is, of course, part of society that we have to also welcome and be supportive of. But we do have a problem with the inappropriate, you know, introduction of ideas at an inappropriate age, like when the kids are 3, 4, or the keeping of secrets from parents, which is another part of this dynamic. Yeah, but the thing that we have to be careful about, Mir, which is, I know everybody here is going to understand, is that there is a segment of our Muslim community that is coming at it from a place of homophobia and transphobia and their own bigotry, you know, and their own control. Like, because what they want to do is they don't want the LGBTQ community to approach their child about sexual issues at the age of 7, but they want to force their girl to cover her hair. So they want to be able to hypersexualize their girl, but you guys can't, you know, because they have their own bigotry. And so I've been really careful about that community, but I do know many, many amazing, sincere parents from that community that are coming at it from the same, you know, road in the middle that most of us do. And Amir, I do want to give a shout out that I completely respect and recognize that people must, you know, safeguard their homes and their families economically, and never would wish any risk to a person's well-being. You know, I lost my friend, right, already from this earth. Danny was not a cowboy. He did not want to go to Afghanistan. He was sitting in Karachi, and he had emailed me something. He said, I'm anxious to go to Afghanistan, but I'm not anxious to die. And I don't want any of you to, quote, you know, lose any of your life on this earth. But I hope, Amir, that you have a nice burner account on Twitter to clap back at my trolls and Yasmine's trolls. And that alone is contribution. You know, that alone, if you have 8 followers, it's almost like more powerful than 8,000 or 80,000, because you're just the ordinary person saying, wait a second, you need to back off and stop using all these slurs and names, and you don't make any sense. And you guys speak volumes when you speak up.
Thank you, Asra. Let's move on to Gina, who has been patiently waiting to be next.
Thank you both for doing this and organizing, Yasmine. Asra, I love you. Here's my question. I'm a veteran of the entertainment business. I've been here in LA for over 20 years, and I run a soundstage. I've worked in everything from music to movies to you name it, I've done it. And I've been for some time wanting to write about my experiences, because I'm in the belly of the woke beast, and I pay attention to a lot of things here in Los Angeles, where I live. Part of me is also very frustrated. I'm Indigenous and Jewish. So one of the things I run into a lot is these people think they can speak for somebody like me. They can't, but they do, like BIPOC.
Right.
That's not a thing. We're not, and you know, we're just not. So, you know, I've been following a lot of stuff. I start and then I stop. And some of my fear is the same fears, or the things that Amir has brought up, that I don't want problems. I feel like I need to start saying something, because I've worked for some of the biggest entertainment companies on the planet, and they've been responsible, in my opinion, for some really bad things as far as portrayal of a lot of people and how we're perceived. I could just go on and on and on, but I start and I stop because one of my fears is I don't want problems for my family. I also don't want problems for my business. And I get a bit nervous about that. And it's weird because, you know, me going down this road and then starting and stopping, I've actually made friends with some people I never thought I would be friends with, and found that they're very nice. They're classified as dissident right. They've been fantastic though. And they've been a far more open-minded bunch of people than I ever thought I would ever run across. And your book, I'm going to read it. I've got a stack of stuff to read, but yeah, I'm like, what is the advice you would have for somebody like me? Because I would like to do this and I think it needs to get talked about, but nobody's talking about it.
Yeah, you know, many of our parents were in the exact same place that you were at in the summer of 2020. We have many immigrant parents that are both ingrained with the idea that you don't challenge authority. And then they also have in Northern Virginia realities like national security clearances, visa limitations, payments that they have to make for their own mortgage. So what we did that summer is we created an organization that we literally just created on Facebook called Coalition for TJ. And what we did is we made handmade signs because we wanted to communicate that, you know, this was from a place of authenticity. And we have branded ourselves in the reality of our diversity. And I just really know that folks like yourself are shut out of conversations because your analysis may be inconvenient to the diversity, equity, inclusion, you know, propaganda that's being put forth in the workplace. But I almost say today, like, you got to lean into your own intersectionality with these folks and create perhaps, you know, the Indigenous Jewish Coalition for Diversity in Hollywood. And I know, I'm just like I say sometimes, like, I want to have the BIPOC alliance against wokeism, you know. I always want to try to create things using the word for, of course, because just so that we have a hope every day. But if you can find those few people, that's all you need to have your little secret army, and then see how it can manifest in ways that don't create conflict at a time when you're not wanting the conflict, you know, because you cannot force yourself into it. But I think that there's ways to speak up that are not destined for being canceled always. It can be that you invite, you know, a bid from somebody that you know who doesn't just go with the political correctness, and I can tell you that there's folks that I'd like to introduce you to from Hollywood that, for example, are from the Indian community. And you probably saw that the Nacho dance that they had no Indians on the stage at the Oscars, because we, the Asians, don't matter anymore. Like, it was a film about anti-colonialism and they colonized the dance. It was just the absurdity of their politics. But those dancers were left out. You know, they were excluded in the Hollywood community. They have so many studios, and so I think there's growing frustration also among folks that are in the quote intersectional communities that are being erased also. And so that's where I would hope that maybe you could build your own coalition of businesses and consultants and experts, and have your private groups, if you're going to have them at first. We started on WhatsApp, and then we got so big that we moved to Telegram. We have other chats where we have disappearing chats, you know, and we go on Signal, and we have the chats disappear in a day so that folks don't have screenshots that are going to cost them their jobs. You got to do all those things in order to create that community, though. That's so important, so that you don't feel isolated. There's another psychologist, Pamela Paresky, who described really well to me this idea that when we have more people taking the risk, it's less risky for us as individuals then.
So much of what you said reminds me of ex-Muslims in Muslim majority countries. So, you know, my organization, Free Hearts, Free Minds, and that's what we do, is support ex-Muslims in Muslim majority countries. I am blown away. I mean, Lois has a comment here where she talked about how un-American it is, the very idea that taking an honest position can threaten your job, etc., is horrendous and un-American. Talking about disappearing chats so that it doesn't get screenshots so you don't lose your job, and you know, all of these secret alliances and spreading the threat so that one person isn't as threatened if there's like 50 of you speaking. All of these things, like, this is surreal to me that this conversation is going on right now about Americans talking about their culture and what they see is happening in their country, because this is really the go ahead.
This is where freedom.
Well, you talked about freedom of speech and freedom of expression, but this is Pakistan, this is Afghanistan, this is Saudi Arabia, this is shadows of that. You know what I mean? Like, this is actually quite terrifying.
This is my messaging folder on my phone, and so you can see I've got Telegram. So during our conversation now, 16 messages, probably from parents. I know from parents. I got Facebook Messenger, Truth Social, because you gotta be politically diverse, right? Signal. I've got WhatsApp, and then I'm very honored to be a member of several WeChat groups. Most of them are in Chinese, and I cannot understand half the messages that are in this chat, but this is exactly what you said. We're dissidents. You know, we are right now in even in North America and the West, and you even, you know, at some of our rallies, parents have worn masks. They've used the mask in order to be able to not then become part of an FBI national security, you know, hit list on parents, because you probably have all been watching in the news too, how we became such a threat in 2021 here in Northern Virginia, that the Democratic Party used the School Board Association to call us, the parents, domestic terrorists. And you guys uniquely can understand why I was like, no, that's not happening. I went to Walmart and I got letters, like little shiny letters, gotta have a little bling in our movement, right? And I wrote, I'm a mom, not a domestic terrorist. And literally downstairs with my camera, you know, I learned from Mossy the value of video, just gave my testimonial in my kitchen, of course, in cinematic mode, you guys, right? Because we always look better in cinematic mode. And I said, like, forget this. Like, I've gone to Guantanamo Bay to chase down terrorists. Like, you are not going to shame us as terrorists. And the Republicans are in charge now in the House, and they're having these hearings called the weaponization of government against citizens. And they found the receipts. Indeed, they targeted us as parents for political purposes, and it's been exposed. And you know, parents were arrested at school board rallies, but we didn't back down. I mean, it's just unconscionable, just like you said, Yasmine, that we should have to go to such ends to exercise free speech. But I'm with all of you in knowing, you know, the hurdles that you face, but you can figure it out in using these tricks that we've got today to do it safely.
And maybe ask questions, Gina, rather than making statements too. I love all the advice that Asra gave about, you know, make contracts and alliances with people that you know already. But having conversations with people who you want to maybe open their minds to different perspectives. Ask questions versus making statements so that they can't be used against you. And I wanted to add as well, Sorry, Gina,
Sure.
just one more little tiny nugget of information here is I wanted to share that women in Saudi Arabia who were driving when there was a ban against women driving in Saudi Arabia were called domestic terrorists, and they were imprisoned under domestic terrorism charges. Just wanted to say that. Sorry, Gina, go ahead.
Yeah. But one other question. One of my other questions for you, Asra, is a lot of these woke ideologies you're right, they're religions. They are, you know, if you break it down the way that you would look at a religion, that's what it is at this point. What I don't understand is why nobody is legally challenging them, because, you know, if you go into a school, you go into a workplace, you're not allowed to preach Jesus Christ or any of that kind of stuff, because that's something you do in your own time and you go to your own places to do that. And that's fine. But for some reason, nobody's doing that. And I don't understand why I'm not seeing anybody legally. I'm starting to see a little bit at some of the colleges and stuff, but and again, I don't know how things work in Canada or the UK, but these are ideologies of belief at this point, and I don't believe in that. So I have a right to not believe in that, just like I have a right to not to believe in whatever. So, you know, again, you believe in things, you go somewhere to believe in them, at home, church, mosque, temple, wherever you go do these things. I'm like surprised that there's not a lot more effort put into trying to challenge some of this stuff on a legal level. And I don't know if you know anybody that's doing that or not.
Yeah, you know, lawfare is a new term that I've learned over these last 3 years. I love it. Yasmine, breaking the news here that I, at the youthful age of 57, am dedicated now to go to law school, because if Kim Kardashian can do it, I can do it. I want to do it because, you know, when I started challenging the mosque segregation, I was like, why is this even legally allowed? Well, they use the establishment clause, you know, they use freedom of religion in this country to practice their gender apartheid. And they get these shields, our America's freedoms allow these shields. And so unfortunately, what's happened is all this indoctrination. I mean, critical race theory is racism taught in law schools. You know, one of the ideologues of it says literally that one remedy for past discrimination is present discrimination. That's the prophet Ibram X. Kendi that's written this book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. And the problem is that this is protected speech, right? This is free speech for them, just like we couldn't go after so many of these ridiculous ideologues in our Muslim community, you know, that were pushing what we knew was extremist ideas. Well, the way our opening that we're using to fight in the courts is the 14th Amendment, which I didn't even know about. I just enjoyed its benefits for most of my life. But in the summer of 2020, I learned about the 14th Amendment, and that 14th Amendment in the United States is about equal opportunity under the law. And when you say that we are going to change admissions to a school with the intention of dropping one race, that is not the 14th Amendment in practice. And we went to court. We had this nonprofit group called Pacific Legal Foundation represent that group. Remember, I told you in the summer of 2020, we just created a group. There were 5 parents, Coalition for TJ. Well, there is a case now that is going to be the Brown versus Board of Education case for the 21st century. It's Coalition for TJ versus Fairfax County School Board. And we won. We won a federal court decision by this judge in Alexandria, Virginia. And this is what's going to freak you guys out. Alexandria, Virginia is the court that has been known as the anti-terrorism court in the United States, because so many of our Muslim extremists have run through Northern Virginia. The mosque that practiced, you know, and taught female genital mutilation, it's called the 9/11 Mosque because the hijackers prayed there. So this court in Alexandria, Virginia has put so many guys in jail, including a guy for Al-Qaeda propaganda, right? And so in that court, we won this decision last year that ruled that the new admissions policy is unconstitutional. It's a violation of the 14th Amendment, and it's racist against Asians. We're going to lose on appeal because the school board is so stubborn that they're appealing the case. But then when we lose, because it's a panel that is clearly against us, we're going to take it to the US Supreme Court. And you guys are probably following a case of Students for Fair Admission versus Harvard. That case is about critical race theory being practiced as racism against Asian kids in higher education admissions. And those are the ways that we're trying to chip away at their ideology of inequality. But as Amir said, you know, they're bringing it in with these fancy words like equity and diversity and trying to fool people. And so the only way we can win in court, I think, is by showing how the equal opportunity of America or Canada is being violated by the practices and policies that they are putting in place because of the ideology of their really, you know, wrong and misdirected religion. I don't think we'll ever be able to go after just the religion of this ideology because it's a business, it's an empire, and what we have to do is go after their policy and practices, just like everybody else. When you go after Islamic extremism, you go after them when they become violent, right? When they incite violence, things like that, and that's the tactic I think we're going to have to take in court of law against these extremists.
Thank you, Asra. You good with that, Gina? Let's move on to the next person. Awesome. Okay, Bart, please unmute yourself.
Hey, thanks for hosting this. Big fans of both of you. Appreciate all your courage and tact and warmth. And it can't be easy. It's very inspirational. I want to change the topic a little bit about blasphemy laws and the recent occurrence in the UK, Wakefield, UK, with a 14-year-old. I'm sure most are well aware. Did either of you see the ensuing Sharia law trial struggle session at the mosque that week? Quite something. I don't know if this happens regularly. I don't think it's ever happened in Canada, but political Islam seems to have, and cultural Islam seems to have a hold in the UK. Just, I guess my question is, how concerned should Western countries be about blasphemy laws? You know, if you can't critique a thing, then it can never be improved, and maybe that's part of the problem, right? So I don't know. Like, I kind of have concerns about being able to support those reformers, you know, like yourselves and 𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏 and all these people who are trying to be reasonable.
Right.
Because what happened in Wakefield was not reasonable, and if anyone hasn't seen it, find out the name of the mosque and go to their Facebook website. That's the only place I could find the whole hour-long session, other than, you know, clips here and there on Twitter. But anyway, your thoughts. Thanks.
Yeah, no, I followed it really closely, and I think that case is really important because it reveals the woke army in K through 12 education, just like we have experienced in the United States. If people don't know about this case, it was a boy who was perhaps on the spectrum related to autism, and he said something that was interpreted as, quote, blasphemous by the ideologues, you know, in Islam. It was a moment to shame the boy, to shame the school, and to, you know, win in this oppression Olympics. Like we are now in the oppression matrix, and a boy with autism or disability is now below the Muslim man who has been offended by something that this young boy has said. And the poor boy's mother joined in this.
He scuffed a Quran.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
what it was.
Yeah.
It was a Quran that was, I mean, you had to, it's comical.
Yeah.
How they went over just exaggerating over, oh, it has been defaced.
Yeah.
It's a terrible dark day, blah, blah, blah. And then you see the Quran, it's like some of the pages are a little bit folded or something. Like they had to like circle it in the pictures to show
my
you
God.
like, this is
Yeah, like-
this is what some teenage boy did to a book. Like, calm
Yeah, like-
down.
Like my Qurans are, 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth shelf below, right from the top. That, as you all know, oh my gosh, I'm violating the rule that it has to be at the top, the highest place in the room, right? Like, it's so ridiculous. But yeah, I had that same kind of struggle session when my mom and I would go into the mosque in the front door. They had a hearing to ban me from the mosque, and they literally pulled names that were of the men that were going to be on my Sharia court out of a hat. And my mother just went with me and just laughed at them. And they were trying to intimidate me, but that's what they're doing with this family. But the message
That
was,
poor woman, his mother had to sit there with the hijab on.
yeah,
And be admonished by all of these men. And there were UK police officers sitting along with these men, nodding along with
Yeah.
these atrocious things that these men were saying. They're attacking a young boy. The boy
Right.
was receiving death threats, and the people who sent him death threats were spoken to. They had conversations with them. Yet this boy was suspended from the school because he
Yeah.
scuffed a book.
Yeah, and that's where the politics of this woke army is entering into a school system and creating a shaming culture. They're using their tactics of shame. They put a virtual dunce cap on the kid. That was something that we were supposed to have gotten rid of decades ago, but now they think that it's okay to shame kids. And in this case, it was a kid for being, quote, Islamophobic. Another day, it's going to be a kid for being, transphobic. Another day, it's going to be a kid who dared to, just say, I'm not going to play the privilege bingo game, that they're going to be reprimanded. I mean, nobody is safe from this character assassination campaign that has happened and is a tactic of intimidation. I know that puts fear, like some of the conversation we've already had. Being the target of the character assassination campaign makes people fear speaking out, but when we don't speak out, people have to endure ridiculous, humiliation like this. And
Alone.
Yeah. And I feel what you must have felt, Yasmine, just such sadness that, of course, that's where people have to make choices, which is, I don't believe your system, and that's the hard part, a family's decision and the intimidation that they do. But to the question, you can guarantee that everything that we've been experiencing has created that struggle session, and the belief that those mosque men could put a family through this, and it will be used as inspiration to intimidate more people.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah,
I saw. Go ahead, Bart.
I thought chilling that the imam who was hosting the struggle session, veiled threats about Islam will never be disrespected in any city, in any country. We will use our bodies to ensure this doesn't happen. It was like, are we eating this up in the West? Like, are we just letting this fly while the mom's sitting over there cringing? And the MP went to go visit, and another imam from the mosque went to go to the kid's house because he said he did some research on Islam and gained some knowledge and was testing him. And then the imam who was running the session kept on referring to as long as the whole situation brought you closer to Islam, then all is well. That was the general vibe. And I was like, holy crap, man, we need to recognize this.
Yeah. It's the Salem witch trials all over again, and they'll do it to everyone.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. And going back to your point, Asra, about the alliance between these two groups, they're both using bottom-up blasphemy laws. They already exist, Bart. Those blasphemy laws are already there. They're not top down like they would be in Iran, but they are certainly bottom up. Just like with Islamophobia is being thrown at you and people are afraid. And the same thing happens on the left as well, where you're going to have all sorts of slurs. Oh, you're racist, you're xenophobic, you're transphobic, you're whatever. Again, it's to silence people. It's the witch trials, like you said, Asra. This is how they keep control over everybody. Back to Gina's comment about how can I even speak, or Amir's comment, how can I even speak without having this fear of losing my career or not being able to pay my mortgage? That's what they have. These blasphemy laws already exist. You cannot blaspheme in speaking up against either one of these ideologies. And the thing is about this, with it being bottom up like that, is that we still have an ability to fight back. We can still make these decisions. You know, like, we're not going to be thrown in prison like you would if you were in Afghanistan or Pakistan or Saudi Arabia. We're not going to get, you know, executed or beheaded and hung from a crane, but we are going to be taking risks, but we have to take calculated risks. We just have to. I've spoken to so many teachers in schools in the UK and in Canada. In Canada, we have an actual Islamophobia officer at the federal government level who is investigating things now, like how our charities, we've had, I can't even tell you how many charities in Canada have been linked to terrorism. They take the money and they give it towards terrorist activities. And so now they're looking into that and they're saying, is this Islamophobic? Why do you keep on not allowing these charities to give money to these terrorist organizations? Why do you keep on investigating Muslims? It must be because you're Islamophobic. So they're finding all of these ways to basically, they're finding ways to elevate themselves. They're finding ways to get stronger and to grow more through using these blasphemy slurs. And so we have to let it roll off our backs, and we have to just continue to push little bits at a time, carefully, like I said, calculated risks. But the last thing in the world that we can do right now is to just appease and to capitulate. My God, does that make my blood boil when I see people in the West doing that? Like all those people nodding along as this poor woman is sitting there in hijab, having to apologize, you know, like a Shia self-flagellating. Oh my God, my son scuffed a book. Like, you people are all insane. And this poor woman, like this is happening in the United Kingdom. Like, where are your spines? Do you have spines? We have to be able to speak up. We have to be able to say no. I know that it's dangerous and that you have to be careful, but you must. You cannot be complicit, and you certainly cannot capitulate the way that we're seeing everybody in the West capitulate.
So I just stepped away because I wanted to show you guys the work that it takes sometimes. Like, I'm a reporter, right? An investigative reporter. What happened for me is I was the target of that kind of blasphemy law, you know, informal, like you said, Yasmine. It was that I was shaming Islam by daring to say that it was sexist to relegate women to second-class conditions in the mosque. And they started calling me Islamophobic, and they called me all sorts of slurs, like Zionist media whore was my favorite, because they tried to slut shame me and also, you know, brand me with the Israel hate. Well, this is what I did, you guys. And this is the kind of network that we face. This is literally the network right there of the people that I ended up, again, you can see them, all these names. I know all I'm missing is the thread on the wall, but it's a network that has put this phenomena of blasphemy as a weapon. And now they have as Anti-Islamophobia Day by the UN, promoted by who? Who went to the UN? It was Imran Khan, one of the prime ministers of Pakistan before he lost power, former cricket player, who said—
What a joke.
Yeah, who said we have to make this a day. And meanwhile, they are allowing extremism within their community against Jews, Israel, Christians, Hindus, India, a million,
And other Muslims as well.
Ahmadis, Shias, a Sunni Muslim feminist, everybody and everything. And so we just got to expose it, call it out, and do it in whichever way you're comfortable, whether it's a anonymous Twitter account or a letter to the editor. But we need your voices, every single person, because otherwise just use as your North Star the image of that mom sitting there, being humiliated in the name of Islam.
Thank you so much, Asra. Bart, are you good with that response? Did you want to follow up? You're awesome. Okay, great. So I asked Asra to give me an hour of her time, and she has given me 2 hours already. So thank you so much, Asra. I really appreciate that. I just want to make sure that anybody who had anything to ask Asra or anything to say to her has had an opportunity to do so before I pass the mic on to Asra for her final comments. Mohand, please.
Thank you very much, ladies, for the work that you're doing. I love you both. I know Yasmine. I had the pleasure of meeting Yasmine last summer. I followed you for many years on Facebook when I was on Facebook, Asra, but I'm no longer on Facebook, so I know who you are somewhat as well. Thank you for being the voice for those that have been silenced, and thank you for giving hope for those that don't have in their own countries or no matter where they are. I know the fight that you are carrying is a difficult one because you're fighting basically against three major things. One of them being money. The Gulf countries and Iran shovel a lot of money to discredit the types of people courageous like you that are trying to bring about the truth. You're fighting against governments that the Islamists and now the woke as well. And thank you for making that parallel, which I never thought about, but you're absolutely right, Asra. That the militants of those two ideologies squat the governments and through entrism get elected into positions where they can obviously sow their seeds of hate. And of course, last but not least, the media. We're fighting the media. I live in Montreal, Canada. Right now I'm in Florida because it's a little bit too cold up north. But, my question is, how can we, those that are interested in doing something, how can we federate across the borders so that our voices are united, so that our forces carry a bit more than they do right now? Because we seem to be doing a tremendous amount of work, but in cells. And of course, it's effective to a certain point. But if we look at the way these ideologies are progressing, they're obviously making a lot of headway compared to us. One example, our prime minister, which I like to call selfie first, because he's an idiot, he's a communist, and completely sold to wokeism, because at one point when he was maybe 20 or something, he painted his face black and he just can't stop crying every time somebody brings anything up of that sort. So even though as has been said, we do have in Canada laws for anti-blasphemy laws. He was convinced by some of his close advisors that are Islamists to appoint an anti-Islamophobia counselor to the tune of nearly $200,000 that it's going to cost to Canadians. And this lady has expressly said many times her hate for non-Muslims. And even though we as a group, we wrote a petition, and there's even an official petition at the government level, Yasmine, you signed it as well. You know, these types of actions by governments, the type of actions by media, again, as I said, you know, for example, if we talk of a country, a Muslim country, if there's an article about Algeria or Tunisia, and they need to show a woman, you can bet 99.9% of the time it's going to be a woman with a hijab. Even though in Canada, there is less than 5% of Muslim women, or that come from Muslim countries, that actually wear a hijab or a niqab or something. So it's sometimes it is discouraging to see that we cannot come together and make and unite our fights across borders, because we can't do it within a country. You know, right now in the US, for example, you know, they're squatting the government now, right, with the help of the Democrats, such as you know, you call them the left. What did you call them? The left, the radical left, okay, such as Ocasio-Cortez and etc. So we need to do something across borders. It just cannot be just local. Otherwise, we're not going to get anywhere. Thank you.
Tell him about clarity, Asra.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about was, you know, I feel exactly what you have felt. I have, you know, been in this battle since the spring then of 2002. And it is oftentimes feels like we're up against a network and a machine, and it is truly well funded. But here we are, some 22 decades later, and we have come together. I went with Yasmine and Muslim reformers like 𝗬𝗢𝗪 and 𝗟𝗘𝗓 𝗏 to a conference that we had in Salzburg, Austria, a place that I had never gone before. And there in this protected space, because this is what we had. We had, you know, an imam from France who faces death threats. We had a author from Germany who faces death threats, a woman who started a mosque that is, you know, led by women in Germany who faces death threats. Ayaan Hirsi Ali was there, who faces death threats. And we came together, and it was the first meeting of this new coalition that's called Clarity. And the intention of it is to stand up to the Islamist extremist threat that we all face in the world. And there, 2 decades after I had begun my own journey, I met new friends, you know, in this struggle, people that I didn't know because of language barriers that we've got, or just geography. And Clarity is one of those ways that you can join to then expand and amplify our ideas, where we are mostly volunteer-led in this effort. And the movement may be slow, but it is going to be consistent, just as we have been for the last 2 decades. So the website, can you give me the website name again?
It's claritycoalition.org.
So
And there's a button there called Join Us, and just click on that and sign up to join us.
Yeah. And I just will give you one moment from that conference that shall be like a historical reminder of the moment that we're in. In that building that was considered, you know, prized property, the Nazis had built their headquarters during their siege on Europe and their siege on the Jewish people. And so in the main dining room where we sat with people who were Jewish, Christian, atheist, ex-Muslim, Muslim, we challenged.
Bread together. Yeah.
Yeah, we broke bread, we listened to music together, we drank wine together. That's the first, reform that I would do as a Muslim reformer, have Muslims have a glass of wine just to chill out. The extremists, and it was just remarkable, you guys, because Ayan said it then that, the world had to come together to defeat Nazism, an ideology of another ism, decades ago. And we have to do the same related to Islamism. We have to challenge its nexus with wokeism, and history will reveal that we're on the correct side of history. So join us, if you will, because it is easier and better with kindred spirits. You can share as much as you want to publicly. You can just support us privately, amplify, retweet a message. That's profound contribution right there. Do a reply quote tweet, and wow, you've just, won the lottery in contribution. It's so small, the contributions that we have to make sometimes to make a difference, but that coalition, I think, offers us one path to building, just like what you were talking about, a global movement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we are from across the globe, Mohand, and as Asra said, we're from all different identities, all different ethnicities, all different backgrounds, religious or otherwise, and we're all coming together with one united goal. And even if as individuals, as a mom, I'm going to go ahead and quote a Disney movie now. In A Bug's Life, there was the moment when the ants were afraid of the crickets, and the crickets were saying, if only these ants figured out, like, we don't want them to figure out that they outnumber us 100 to 1, because that's their power. Like, one little ant can't do anything on his own, but together, that's when we're really going to see a difference. And so I hope that you will join us. And I'm glad that you did ask that question, because it gave Asra and I an opportunity to talk about that coalition that is just budding, but we expect it to grow bigger and bigger very quickly.
Thank you. I will certainly join.
Great, thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you.
So Asra, before I let you go, please, any last words for us? Any words of advice? You've been through so much, you've accomplished so much. I know you have so much wisdom to share. Or if you just want to let people know where they can get your book, where they can follow you, how can we continue to learn from you? Yeah,
and in this exchange, I will always learn from all of you. I have an open DM on Twitter at Asra Nomani. My email is there. I've even added my phone number, you guys, and nobody calls. So please feel free to reach out. Send me a tip. My Twitter handle is at Asra Nomani. My email address is asra@asranomani.com. And please go to Amazon to get the book, because it is the work of my life as a reformer and as an activist to embolden you, to prevent you from having to go through all of the same suffering, so that I can share the lessons learned and impart upon you the stories that I hope will give you courage to act in whichever way you wish. One of the greatest principles that I learned from my mom was to live without shame, and it has taken me my lifetime to really lean into that. The estrogen has dropped, which is a lovely part of aging also, along with the wisdom highlights, which we began our conversation. I don't know what I would do without, my parents and their love and support. And however you can find that love and support, whether it's, in your, what we call, our intentional families that we create, do use that to know that you're not alone in all these efforts. Support Yasmine, please, in all of her efforts, amplify her voice so that she can build the movement even stronger, because the work that she's doing is the work of building an alternative universe, and that's so important to give people a different path and a different choice. I will just end with this little story that these men, they came after me for all those years when I was going into the mosque with my mom. They were the establishment. They were the alphabet soup of organizations, headquartered down the road from me here at 500 Grove Street. And I ended up, you will see chronicled in the book, filing a lawsuit against the anonymous character assassins. And when I unmask them, which what you all read in the book, is I've got the receipts that they were the leaders of this organization, the Council on American Islamic Relations, that has fooled the West into thinking that it's a civil rights group, when it's actually a front organization for the ideology that we all oppose. So I just wanted to share that story with you, because it did take the 2 decades, to confront them, to put this book out into the world. And I had my first book reading on the sidewalk outside their headquarters in the shadow of the Capitol here in Washington, D.C. It was a book reading with my own camera, filming myself and cars here and there. So we can do it. Like, we're all just individual human spirits, but collectively, Yasmine is with me. I know that. My mom is with me. You all are with me. It is what will change the world. It will change your lives. It will change the lives of generations to come. And the fact that you're even here is part of your resistance, to this tyranny that they are trying to impose on our world. So keep building this community, and definitely, I'm going to be the mattress discounter place now. Go on Amazon and give the book a 5-star review, because my haters are trying to use algorithm against me. But we have to, that's your way in all of these forms and all of these formats, that even anonymous yourselves or unspoken by name, you are speaking loudly and clearly. So know that each one of you is making a difference. Like, feel no shame at all if you feel a limit in what you can do, because each action of yours challenges their tyranny. And that's the ultimate path that we're going to have to take to prevail and to win. And we will win, because I'm not in it for anything but to win it, and we will win.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much, Asra. You've already got some books sold here in the chat. People have been ordering it as they were chatting with you right now. And other people are already in the middle of reading it. And so we look forward to having you back in a book reading. Just as you were talking about your book reading on the sidewalk, we should do that. I'm going to have like my first forgotten feminist. You're not a forgotten feminist at all, but it's the name of my podcast. But we're going to have a book club where we're all going to read it, and then we'll invite you back where you can talk to us about the book and answer some questions.
Well, I think that your title is really appropriate, even for somebody like myself that might, have a book out or this or that, because they want me to be forgotten. That is their goal. They want to discredit those of us that are out succeeding in the court of public opinion, and they turn us from heroes into zeros, because they want us erased. And so this affirmation, you can't even know how much it means to me to to be seen in my community, you know, to have my words appreciated and my efforts appreciated in the community, because we're the, you know, that which they want to make invisible. So this, you know, it means so much to me. I can't even begin to tell you. It really means so much to me to have a conversation with people who are from my community and those that support us, because our community would like to erase all of us, and we're not going to go away.
No, absolutely not. Love it. Thank you so much, Asra. Really well said. Very inspiring. So gracious of you to share so much of your time with us. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here today. And we'll see you all at the next Forgotten Feminist. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.